So at the beginning of class, you finished your Maya Angelou projects and wrote the paragraph on the back, which is on the PowerPoint from last time. So you're just writing about how the Maya Angelou poem, how your calligram relates to the poem. So you're justifying your artistic choices using the tone. So one paragraph. Okay, so we're gonna move on to a new protest. And actually, if everyone would do me a favor and put these poems away in your bags. You already had one from before, right? Yeah. Because I accidentally printed the next one on pink paper and I don't want to get confused. So if you'll put those all the way away, then I can. All right, so we're going to talk about feminist protest songs today and feminist protest poetry. Actually, Maya Angelou, that Still I Rise poem definitely kind of qualifies under that heading, but it's my goal today to work in, actually I better record. Oh, it is recording. It is my goal to work in the Oscars and what happened last night into every lesson because I'm kind of obsessed with it. So if you did not, who watched the Oscars? Like who was watching when it happened? That was bananas. It was definitely not staged. So, because here, I'll explain what happened to those of you who it hasn't gotten around yet, although it's going to be the biggest story on social media for the next week or so.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, Will Smith was kind of a punching bag all night. It wasn't just Chris Rock making fun of Will Smith, because Will Smith was up for an Oscar and he was like a favorite to win. So it was like all the predictions said he's a shoo-in for King Richard, like the movie about the Williams sisters. He was going to finally win his Oscar. And if you know anything about Will Smith, like if you've been following his career at all, you know that this is what he has wanted for like 20 years. Like he does all of these like Oscar bait kind of movies to really try to win this role. And he's been nominated a couple times and never won. So this was like going to be his year, right? And part of what the Oscars is about is kind of like roasting the celebrities. Like all of the comedic elements usually have something like making fun a little bit of the A-list celebrities, right? And so he's getting a lot of jokes kind of his way. And a lot of them are meaner than the one that actually made him blow up. But Chris Rock goes on stage and he makes fun of Jada Pinkett Smith, Will Smith's wife. And he says, "Oh, I can't wait for G.I. Jane 2. Which is a really hacky, dumb joke. It's like G.I. Jane was this movie in the 90s where Demi Moore, this actress, shaved her head because she was like going into the military and she had to prove she was tough. So it was basically a way of being like, oh, you're like that girl from G.I. Jane. Like it's like the easiest bald joke you can make. But Jada Pinkett Smith is kind of like famously struggles with alopecia, and she's talked in the past, that's when you lose all your hair. She's talked in the past how it's been really hard for her to lose her hair. So he tells this joke about G.I. Jane 2. She's not laughing at all. She's just like kind of glaring at him. Will Smith laughs for a couple minutes, or a couple seconds. And then you see him look over at her and see her reaction to it. And it cuts away from them before we see his reaction. But then it cuts back and Chris Rock is obviously reacting to what he sees in front of him. And he's like, oh, come on, that was a nice one. Saying like, that was not that mean of a joke, you know? But then Will Smith starts walking up onto stage and Chris Rock still thinks it's like a bit that like Will Smith is like playing along with him. But Will Smith, and so he's sort of like, oh, like, and laughing still. But then Will Smith comes up to him and open palm slaps him really hard and fast. His form was amazing. Like Will Smith has done a lot of like training. Anyway, so it totally looks staged because of how fast it happens, and like he kind of like reacts like this, and he doesn't move. Like Chris Rock is standing like this, and he like took that hit. Can we watch it? We can't because it's not school appropriate. No. But Chris Rock says, no, I'll explain. You can watch it after class. Chris Rock says, "Oh, Will Smith just slapped I'm gonna say it, the shit out of me." And he kind of and so it's like everyone's sort of like, ha ha ha, like, is it a bit? Like, can't tell. The feed cuts out because Oscars, the Academy was like, no, like whatever's gonna happen, we can't have people watching this. There's no, there's silence now. So they cut the feed, and then the feed comes back, but the audio doesn't. And you can see Will Smith in the crowd yelling at Chris Rock, and you can tell what he's saying. He's saying, "Keep my wife's name out of your effing mouth," and he says it twice. And then Chris Rock has to recover. It's so painful to watch. Like, my stomach was hurting from anxiety. He has to recover, and he's like, "Well, you've just seen the best night of television ever, right?" And then he has to present best documentary feature, which are like the movies about like how hard life is in China, or like the man who has to flee, the Middle East and get stuck in Russia, like these very serious movies, and he has to like present these awards. Later, Xavier?
On CNN, they had the unfiltered version.
Yeah.
So I watched that. And Chris Rock had like a comment saying that it wasn't that bad or something.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "Keep her name out of your mouth." And he's like, "Okay, I will."
I will. Yeah, right. He's like, "No, I'm going to." Like, he's like not going to say anything more. Yeah. So immediately after the hit, everyone goes on Twitter. Twitter explodes. It like crashes Twitter. And then the other feeds start coming in. So the Australian feed and the Japanese feed, like, that have the actual, like, they didn't cut the audio. So everyone knows what happens. During commercial break, so then they have this footage from during commercial break, because everyone up in the balcony is like taking out their phones to film it. And like Will Smith comes back, and Chris Rock is off stage, and all of these people are like consoling him. And honestly, it's almost all men are like going up and like being like trying to calm Will Smith down, and being like, just sit down. I think Bradley Cooper was very involved in calming him down, and Denzel Washington are like, hey, come on, like, keep it together. There's all this reaction shots too of like, Nicole Kidman looks like, when you're at a stop sign and your mom, like, you hit it too fast, your mom is like this. Like, Nicole Kidman looks like that, like she's gonna protect everyone. Anyway, that's beside the point. So all these men are like trying to get him to calm down or whatever. He just sits down, no security, like, that anyone can see. Like, he just sits back down in his front row seat, and he's just gonna watch the Oscars again. So the question on everyone's mind was like, are they going to change the winner? Because he is a front runner. He's going to win Best Actor. Are they going to give it to somebody else because they don't want Will Smith to be back on stage, But they don't. He wins the award. He comes on stage, and it's heartbreaking. Like, at this point, he's turned into this like tragic figure. So he's like, what's supposed to be his best night ever is like way too complicated now. It's like his best and worst night at the same time. So he's crying, and he has like a kind of non-apology during the speech. He says stuff about like how he's meant to protect people, like how as a man and as a father he needs to protect women. So he says, when I was playing a father in this role, I had to protect the woman who's playing his wife. I had to protect the girls that are playing his daughter. So he uses this word of protect a lot, and it's kind of like him sort of like saying, so I apologize to the Academy, but never apologize to Chris Rock, and just says, I hope they invite me back again next year. But it's this language of protection that I want to think about today. See, I'm working it in. Crazy stories. It was bonkers. But it's the language of protection that some people are talking about in an interesting way. What I want to know is, do you think that what Will Smith did, going up on stage, hitting, I want to say punching because it was almost, but it was like open hand, hitting Chris Rock to protect his wife's like honor or like her feelings, do you think that was a good choice for women? And I don't want to say this is like, he's doing it for all women, it was just for her, but I want to think of it as this like kind of feminist problem. Do you think it was a good choice for women or a bad choice for women? Did Will Smith help women or harm women in what he did? Sophie?
Like,
Yeah.
I don't think she felt protected by that. She was like, oh gosh, that's like uncomfortable. I mean, I know like the thought of like what he was trying to protect, he could have still protected without like full on going to stage.
Okay, so he could have done the yelling without the punching, and then
Yell. Just like it was like I don't even know how to explain it. That's not on live television.
okay, so it's like because he's embarrassing her, that's where it's like actually hurting.
It's like it didn't help anybody to do that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, got it. Yeah, JD.
How do we know that she didn't want to do it?
She kind of looks like it.
She looks pissed.
Yeah.
She's laughing. And then he's like, oh shoot, my wife. Didn't she like cheat on him a couple times?
She's
And
kind,
kind of a wedge towards him.
she's kind of the boss.
She's kind of an a-hole towards him. So she, you know, he sees that as like, oh, now I gotta do something about it. So he overreacts, but I think she kind of wanted that.
Okay, so
I
you
think
feel
that
like,
she totally had like, there was a lot that she played in that where she wanted him to do something.
okay, so this is like him showing that he's a good husband because he's like, I will do sort of like what you need me to do or what you
Yes,
want me to
when
do.
She's trying to do it for her.
Yeah.
It doesn't look good for anybody else.
Okay, so it was a
Like,
mistake, but the
considering-
motivations
yeah,
might have been.
Considering the relationship there, it's like, okay, she for sure wanted something to happen.
Yeah.
It's not good what she.
Okay, so then it's like, it's almost like her mistake rather than the real
It's-
Macbeth
it's-
situation.
She should have overreacted the way he did, but I got a feeling she was a big role and bought like.
Got it, got it. Gavin?
But just like see.
Yeah. I don't think anyone else is gonna make fun of Jada Pinkett Smith at the Oscars ever again. Yeah. Making fun of them in that way or prying into their lives. Yeah, I think like that's interesting because the comment was specifically focused on her looks too, and so often are women like criticized for what they look like, that and like that becomes their sort of capital in society. So to shut that down in particular seems important. Eli?
I kind of like moving away from this because I really see this like an offense against women. It seems more like kind of a reaction, like in Will Smith about the Oscars, because
Yeah.
we do kind of use it to like make fun of Hollywood's kind of narcissistic and actors acts, but it started to become more of like you keep abusing their acting personally, like express themselves. So I feel like more it's that Will Smith like kind of through this is just kind of setting the Oscars back to like we can make fun of institutions, but people aren't like up for it.
Oh, interesting. So not necessarily about women then.
More like you shouldn't be criticizing people, especially based on these stereotypes, but
Yeah.
as a broader picture. They criticize women in that way, but also more like just
Yeah. Okay, I get that. Maggie?
I think it was harmful. It wasn't necessary for any of it to happen because I think like Will Smith didn't really want that to happen, but then since she's like in charge, he's like, okay, I guess I have to do this. Kind of setting a bad reputation, not like on women necessarily, but like on more famous women being looked at for what they do, who they are as a person.
Oh, interesting.
And for her to be like, that was not okay. That's what you have to do to like set everything back to normal, I guess, is just putting a bad reputation on all these other like women who like
Yeah.
are like doing a lot of this for the world. I don't know.
Yes,
Does that make
and
sense?
yes, and it also, I think in that way too, like seeing Jada Pinkett Smith as the one who's like telling him what to do and kind of this like bossy
Just
other B word, like, you know, woman who is like, you know, do what I want, man, is also like a really bad stereotype to place on women. So now the conversation is shifting to like kind of making fun of Jada Pinkett Smith for that role, but like, you know, can't she not laugh at a joke if she doesn't think it's funny, if it's a personal attack to her, you know? Dash.
So I'm not really sure what side I'm on, but I think one thing to consider though is this wasn't just like a random reaction. Chris Rock is kind of famous for making fun of them. Like
Yeah, that's
the
true.
last time he hosted the Oscars, who like they weren't there, and he like all his jokes were about them.
Yeah, right. There's something like specifically about Chris Rock that like he really doesn't like those two, or at least they're like really good fodder for jokes. They are a little pathetic lately. Like they are like airing their business too much because yeah, they had relationship problems and they chose to go on like a very personal interview show to tell all their business about that relationship. And so it's really easy for them to be targets. And I think that one thing that happens here then, and why I'm asking this question about women specifically, is was Will Smith defending his wife, or was Will Smith defending his own masculinity? Like, I don't want to be seen as the type of guy who will sit back and let some other man insult my wife, you know?
I think how you said those two different things, I feel like the classy, I guess, thing to do would have been to just kind of take it and shape Chris side later. But the thing is, what the person on stage did wasn't classy either.
Right.
And so by having that kind of unfiltered reaction, it's almost like saying, hey, my reaction might seem a little tough to you, but from my point of view, his joke was over the top. It wasn't appropriate.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to respond likewise.
It's almost like a sticks and stones argument that words actually can hurt you a lot. So it's like, if words can do a kind of violence to somebody, then you can do a violence in return. To me, it's also about balancing the power. If Will Smith doesn't have a microphone and Chris Rock does have a microphone, then Will Smith is like, well, in order to get this power back here, I need to approach the guy with the microphone, you know, and then I'll have my voice heard. Yeah.
I think it was a lot about the intent. If she told him to do it, or
Right.
if he was genuinely trying to. But based on the fact that they did go on that interview show and living life in this spotlight, probably a lot of things are done for different reasons. I think it's a very reasonable argument that he did it to show that he wasn't a bad person.
Yeah. Right.
Well, I don't know like what his intention was.
We can't.
Like,
yeah.
if it was like protecting his masculinity or protecting his wife, but I think that he did kind of not had to, but he kind of had to do something, especially after seeing her react, after her having that reaction, kind of had to do something in order. Because if he didn't, then we would all be having the same conversation. Just like
he was in such a bad place.
Like,
yes.
Yeah. Why did he? And he kind of had to do something. And like you were saying about like the voice, he couldn't really just talk because he didn't have a microphone, and he like really, I mean, he really couldn't though. But I think because like it was such a overreaction kind of like by everybody's part that he kind of had to do an overreaction too.
Yeah.
Like,
It's really interesting to me too, though, that we're like thinking about his responsibility in this. Like, we're like, but he had to defend his wife. He had to be a protector. Like, he had to stand up for his wife. But like, does he?
I just think none of it was
But
necessary.
can't she? Like, if by her not laughing, wasn't that her standing up for her own sort of like position? Like, to me, sometimes the protection language is like maybe a little triggering to me. I'm like, I don't need to be protected, you know, like I can, especially with words, you know, if somebody were, I'm not as strong as my husband, if somebody was like approaching us to fight, yeah, I'm gonna like put him in front of me, you know, but with words, like, why is this like the male position to stand up and fight for her? And it's really interesting that the way that he does that is in such an emotional way, you know, just like such a like reactive way.
I do agree with you. I think protection is probably the wrong word, but I don't think I disagree with like how it's done in our culture. It's kind of like a husband does not protect the wife, but like defend them, because it is really easy for us to criticize people. Like, you can criticize a guy in some people, you criticize a woman. It's a lot more harsh, I guess, in certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not really attacking someone, it's a superficial things more important. So I feel like the reason that it was, I guess, okay for Will Smith to like go after Chris Rock is because kind of do that in our society, like
socially, that's the expected way to do things.
Punching a guy. Like,
maybe it's the payoff for men making more than women. It's like, you can make more than me, but you got to get in my fights.
it's okay, but like it's more socially acceptable, and in the end, it will probably make things better in the long run. Like, teach everybody this can't keep happening.
Okay, interesting. It's like, it's kind of that idea that like, if men have more of a voice in our society already, then it is their responsibility to stand up and use that voice.
And also where we are in our society, like if Will Smith's wife had come up and then attacked Chris Rock,
Which would have been
it
awesome.
would have been awesome.
Yeah.
Like, he probably would have responded a lot more. Like, hey, why didn't Will Smith do anything about
He
this?
would have been emasculated by it, right? Yeah, for sure. Which like everybody would have been like, oh, he's like, not strong.
It's more like he's not like standing up for his wife, because like that's what we expect.
Yeah, or it would have been like, why didn't he hold his wife back from doing the thing?
They
You
both
know?
Then it would.
Oh yeah, just both of them just rush the
Just
stage.
jump Chris
Yeah.
Rock and his murder.
All right, 3 more comments, then we'll move on from the Oscars. But I just am obsessed with the story. Yeah, Maggie.
I think it's just like stereotypical for men to be stronger than women. And I mean, she could have done something herself, but it just would have been like unexpected for like society, so they wouldn't know what to say about it,
Yeah, for
I guess. And then it's just like, I don't know.
The
Yeah.
reactions to the violence would have been so different. Yeah.
so kind of-
Yes, you can. Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of like both. I don't know. I feel like Will Smith is like trying to help like women, but he's also like hurting because he's like in his Oscar speech, he was like talking about like I have to protect her. Like he's not saying like women could do this themselves. Like he's like saying that like men have to do this for me.
And specifically, I need to do this. And that's what I kind of meant by like, is he defending her or is he defending his place as a man in the society and like fulfilling that stereotypical role? Yeah, Kaylee.
Yes, I was really kind of felt by the word of protect. It could be such a one-sided word. I don't know, this is my opinion, but I feel like husband and wife should support each other. They should both be defending each other, not just one protecting the other. And you made it way so one-sided. But at the same time, this happened really quickly. It's not like you said there
Yeah.
kind of, I'm gonna think about how
Let me think through the
how
social
words work.
implications. Right. Yeah, exactly.
this sound, like we never really had time to do that. So it's really a matter of how we can interpret his word use of the text.
Yeah. So I think it's a good then example of like people being socially constructed into gender roles too then, because that social construction like can immediately kick in. It's not like you have time to like think about your role in society. Okay, last comment. Yeah, Sophie.
I think it really does. I don't really know how I feel about it, but I think it does kind of how people like see men react. I feel like if she would have reacted, then they would just be like, oh, she's sensitive, she can't do it.
She's crazy.
Yeah, but if he's doing it for her, and it's like more generalized, like something like that was not okay.
Yeah.
That was kind of offensive. In that way, he was just trying to stand up for her because I don't think she would do it.
Because if he would have reacted that way to a joke about himself, he probably would have been kicked out. I think people would have been like, oh, he's volatile, like get him out of here. We don't know who he's going to attack next, but because he was doing it in reaction to a joke about her, the social dynamics then become acceptable somehow. Even though, like, again, it was about a bald head. I don't know. I don't have alopecia,
It's
so
kind of
maybe
like
I don't know, but it's
celebrities just can't take a joke.
that's what it feels like.
I feel like part of it is that like that was like most of the jokes that they're telling about them was either like making fun of their movies or just like something about them, but that was like a personal thing
Yeah.
about her looks that she can't control.
Your disability too, like she's immunocompromised, right? And so it's like, yeah, I get that. Okay, so all of this is leading into our little feminist unit here. It's just a one-day thing, but we'll probably have to finish it next time. We're gonna listen to this song by Bikini Kill. Has anyone heard of the band Bikini Kill? Yeah, they are a band from the mid-90s, early 90s, mid-90s that were known for being, well, for starting what's called the Riot Girl movement. So I'm going to show you. They wrote a manifesto, and I love a good manifesto. So we're going to read the Riot Girl manifesto. All right, before I read this, just know this is like meant to offend a little bit. I took out any bad language, but it might be attacking sort of your like value system, and that's okay. That's sort of what they were trying to do. They were trying to provoke in the way that protest songs do. So see what you think of this. This is the Riot Girl. Oh, by the way, it's got 3 R's. Girl, like a growl. All right, and this isn't just to throw it. This was like a huge movement in the 90s. Just to be clear, like this movement was sort of the reason that we have the Spice Girls. It like the Riot Girl movement was so popular that it became monetized, and we got the Spice Girls who were all about girl power. So like this was a big kind of like moment in the 90s. So it says, because us girls crave records and books and fanzines that speak to us, that we feel included in and can understand in our own ways, because we want to make it easier for girls to see, hear each other's work so that we can share strategies and criticize, applaud each other, because we must take over the means of production in order to create our own meanings. There we go. Because viewing our work as being connected to our girlfriends' politics, real lives is essential if we're going to figure out how what we are doing impacts, reflects, perpetuates, and disrupts the status quo. Because we recognize fantasies of instant macho gun revolution as impractical lies meant to keep us simply dreaming instead of becoming our dreams, and thus to seek to create revolution in our own lives every single day by envisioning and creating alternatives to the Christian capitalist way of doing things. Because we want to and need to encourage and be encouraged in the face of all our own insecurities, in the face of beer gut boy rock that tells us we can't play our instruments, in the face of authorities who say our bands, zines, etc. are the worst in the US, and because we don't want to assimilate to someone else's boy standards of what is or isn't. Because we are unwilling to falter under claims that we are reactionary, reverse sexist, and not the true punk soul crusaders that we know we really are. Because we know that life is much more than physical survival and are patently aware that the punk rock you can do anything idea is crucial to the coming angry girl rock revolution, which seeks to save the psychic and cultural lives of girls and women everywhere, according to their own terms, not ours. Because we're interested in creating non-hierarchical ways of being and making music, friends, and scenes based on communication and understanding instead of competition and good and bad categorizations. Because doing, reading, seeing, hearing cool things that validate and challenge us can help us gain the strength and sense of community that we need in order to figure out how ideas like racism, able-bodyism, ageism, speciesism, classism, finism, sexism, anti-Semitism, and heterosexism figures in our own lives. Because we see fostering and supporting girl scenes and girl artists of all kinds is integral to this process. Because we hate capitalism in all its forms and see our main goal is sharing information and staying alive instead of making profits or being cool according to traditional standards. Because we are angry at society that tells us girl equals dumb, girl equals bad, girl equals weak. Because we are unwilling to let our real and valid anger be diffused and or turned against us via the internalization of sexism as witnessed in girl jealousism and self-defeating girl-type behaviors. Because I believe with my whole heart, mind, body that girls constitute a revolutionary soul force that can and will change the world for real. So this is their manifesto, and their main song is called Riot Girl. And we're gonna listen to it. Gotta pull it up on the right side of the screen. And the lyrics are in front of you, but I wanted to give you a warning. There is one quite offensive word in there. She's using it ironically, so she doesn't mean for it to take the offense that it does. It's like she's criticizing the way other people use it. I left it in there because I want you to see how it works in the song, and then if you don't want to look at it again, you can cross it out and scribble it out so you don't have to look at it again. All right, and while you're listening, you're figuring out, is this a good protest song? Your kind of music? All right, it's your favorite song? It's your new favorite song? Amazing. So if you flip over the page, I've got some questions that I want you to answer. Oh, but before we do that, we got to add to your vocabulary, your poetry vocabulary. So take out that blue form that we've been working on.
I guess, Allison, did you get one of these yet?
Oh, you were in the back.
I know.
Okay, I'm gonna start with the definitions in 10 seconds. Okay, you are finding alliteration in that packet. It is on the second to last page. Alliteration. All right, alliteration is, and this is probably a word you already know, but let's get the definition down anyway. Oh, it's the one that's alliteratio with. Okay. Okay, it is repetition of sounds at the beginning of words. Repetition of sounds at the beginning of words. Yes. Repetition of sounds at the beginning of words. So, the one tricky part about alliteration is in the English language, the letter does not always sound the same. So you can have a word like alligator, but awesome. So it has to be the same repetition of sounds to count as alliteration. So make it alliteration with your name. Like, for example, mine could be like, Whitney wants to wallow in sadness. Why did I go with wallow? Whitney wants whiskey. There we go. Three W words repeated in a row. Try and make some alliteration with your name using at least 3 words.
What's an M?
Like JD. Over. Oh, Juniper. All right, I put this up here just as a asks, alligators.
Ashton asked alligators about apples.
There we go. All right, do you see here something to point out here? It still counts as alliteration even if there's some words in between. In poetry, if it's within 2 lines, we can count it as alliteration. You could use the same one. I don't know, they're all weird. All right, you got one? Okay, let's do the next one, assonance. Assonance is the repetition of vowel sounds. Okay, repetition of vowel sounds. This can be at the beginning of words, it can be in the middle of words. It can rhyme, it cannot rhyme. I have a lot of rhyming words here, but it doesn't have to. So that, cat, sat, over, at, the, apple, stand. All of that is assonance for that A sound. So let's just use this one for your example. Make sure you circle that A every time I underline it like this. Circle every A so that you know what you count. It does not have to be in the middle of words. You have assonance in the middle of the word and the beginning. Okay, and then I messed up some things. I gotta do a second draft on this thing. So at the top of the page, you see how it says slant rhyme consonants? Cross out consonants there. It should just be slant rhyme. Those aren't the same. And instead, we're gonna put consonants in its own separate box. Let's just do it at the top of that page. And if assonance is the repetition of vowel sounds, what do you think consonants is? Repetition of consonant sounds. Yep. Repetition of consonant sounds. So we actually have that here. We've got that, sat, and stand, at. And remember, it's sounds and the sound. There's some consonants between these two, but that's a different sound. So it's a repetition of consonant sounds. Why don't you make a repetition of consonant sounds with your name as well? It's hard when it's, what's your, you would find the d sound and repeat that. Yeah. It's hard when it's two letters like that. Or you can repeat that. All right, you got one for your own name? Okay, so now you can answer all of the questions on the second page of the Big Hill song. You can do this on your own or with a partner. I guess you can do it up to 3 people if you guys want to, but everyone needs to fill out their own. All right, I am going to give you 10 minutes and see where you are at the end of 10 minutes with those questions. You don't need to move on to looking at the poems, just the questions for now.
No.
Oh, you're right.
Guys, girl, she's this other girl. Like, oh my God, she's so clever. And she like just thinks she's so cool. Yeah. Amen to that. They were literally a lesbian. I want to be her best friend. And then about how they're best friends. And that's like sister. I did. She likes to like sister. Like so she just thinks it's both. I want to find out who they want to. And then no, but then they're friends. They're friends. Okay. So like the girl to the other girl. Because that's a very good question. Well, watch out. Here, he's gonna keep taking
That's a very solid question.
Oh, I should have mentioned this about the slur that's a little bit later down. Yes, the D word. While you're talking about that, I just want to see that you're remaining respectful about it. I think it's okay if you're talking about it in a very academic sense, but if I hear anybody using it wrongly, I'm gonna lay down the law. Okay.
only showing you because you're the only one. Why? It was a really good scrap, but I couldn't read all. It was just so cool. JD. Hear that?
I can take it too.
I think they all.
My license too.
I didn't get an investment to all
Aren't they
Alejandro.
lesbian? I don't know. Let's take a look at your appreciation for.
I did it to Alejandro. He's like, yeah, I don't know. Oh, against it? Wait. We know it's the orange. I was just thinking.
Why did you do that?
And I think I want to take
See, I used to have like.
Wait, where is that? Just write it down. Is Daphne. It is spicy. It's actually why is everything?
I really think that she's gonna have myself. It could be like a car, like she's like using it as like, but I think it's the song's kind of infantilized to be thinking about like kids. So I think it's myself.
It's not about gender. But I'm saying we're hanging with.
No, but
I'm gonna start a song. I'm gonna write a song about how like.
Should we do Boys Are Back in Town next
Yes.
class?
I want to start a
no,
revolution.
the boys are back from High School Musical. Yeah.
No, because that is not.
No, that song is so.
High School Musical. Let me tell you about High School.
I love High School Musical.
The basketball song. Was it Get Your Head in the Game?
Oh, it's really good.
That song you can tell. I said, I'm not ready. My son who's never played basketball. They went to what years in class? It's like, and then like, oh, and you do the ball, and you shoot basket. It's like, obviously,
No, but
like,
JD,
you
no,
haven't
JD,
played basketball.
you're missing the best part of the song. Why my feelings so rough? I can't see the name
Silence.
of my heart in the song.
That was fun. That was good stuff.
I know, but it's because that's how it is in the movie too.
Okay, got 4 minutes. How's it going so far?
So like halfway.
Okay, perfect. Then.
I think it's defiant. It's defiant and tone.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, but tone is how the author feels about their subject.
Good job for the
Fake, right?
keep an eye over every single line.
No alliteration, assonance, or consonants. Which line is that? Which line?
Let's make sure.
They say has a little assonance there. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't really have anything significant. I might talk about why it, like why they would not want it to, because that harsh sound of the D word right in there, I think stands out so much in the song. I don't think that's just my ears being sensitive to the word. I think it's like actually stands out.
It's not a hard question. This is the first one. I watched it last year. First of all, this is gone. We found it on the- Yeah. The computer's gone. Like, we got it back in the air.
My dog's
No.
it's my dog.
And then there's this here. This is where it's like- And she was like, "Do it." Watch it. Watch it. It sucked. It was horrible. Like, it's horrible. Like, when they like sing together. Black dog. I'm never gonna kiss because that's what it is. That's the night. So what's the night? First of all, thank you. Your nose is absolutely beautiful.
Does anybody know what his picture is still on? Yeah, you didn't find it. Yes.
Yeah, orange flags.
No.
Orange flags.
Yes.
It's like one soda.
Okay, you got a minute? Can you finish in a minute? But I agree, you need a little longer than a minute. Yeah.
I mean, does anyone have a
And that's
pencil?
like
Right?
the medical, like the whole song. It's like we're not just gonna be friends, like we're gonna like we're gonna like
You know what?
about it, we're gonna do something that we're why not. I'm not just gonna.
Oh, yeah. That was good.
Walk around and see like, you know, it's like that's the thing. Wow, I'm so- Yeah, I can't help it. Rubbing off home. Let's go.
I'm like, I'm not even close. Yeah, big hole, too big. Way too big.
It's just like, oh my God.
If there is no enjambment, caesura, or if there is no alliteration, assonance, consonants, ask yourself why the band would not want it to have that kind of flowing sound. Because assonance, consonants, alliteration creates that kind of flow to what you're saying. It makes it sound more poetic. Why would they not want it to sound poetic? That would be for question D. You don't like this one?
No, this one.
Oh, you're talking about it. Oh,
We're talking about High School Musical.
oh okay. This is better than High School Musical.
Such a class.
I'll give you that. It's better than High School Musical. But High School Musical is probably the lowest of lows.
This song was so influential. I don't mind, by the way, if you guys don't leave class Riot Girls. That is totally fine with me. I'm not trying to get you to be, you know, part of the movement. I want to look at the way that the movement is creating the poem now.
Have you seen The Boys? TV show?
Yes.
I left the.
Do you like the Spice Girls line where it's like when we're apart, or when they're apart, they make
Sorry, that was so loud. No, it was this timer.
when they're apart, they do weird things when they're together. I think Spice Girls. That's what people want. Right here.
Okay, I'm gonna give you 2 more minutes. Try and get something written down in every spot. How many of you are done with these questions?
she sent me that show. What is teacher?
Okay. Okay, a lot of people are finished. Some people not quite. If you still need to finish this, you'll need to finish it up at home. We're gonna move on to the next poem. So I would not say that Bikini Kill is the world's greatest poet. They are no Bruce Springsteen, who is at least America's greatest poet. But I do think the reason I wanted to show you that song is because it did like spark this movement, like all during the 90s. If you ever see like a 90s aesthetic with like a girl in like a flowery kind of girlish dress with like combat boots, that is a direct fashion choice that came out of the Riot Girl movement. This way of being like, being a girl is cool, being a girl is tough. We can like other girls, like in the way that she's talking about, right? Which is like, we don't want, what did she say in the manifesto? Like no girl on girl jealousies or something like that. Like not women tearing down other women, but women building each other up. And their insistence on using that word girl as a way of like really celebrating girly things. Like it wasn't about like trying to turn girls into men, or like, which in the 80s it totally was. When you watch like feminist type movies from the 80s, it's all full of like Terminator type movies with like women with muscles who like have guns and like can hang with the boys, you know. This was like in reaction to that. This is in reaction to that, saying like, no, feminine things can be super cool and we can celebrate these things too. So with that in mind, I chose two poems that are much better quality, I think. Not that I think the Bikini Kill song is awesome. That's maybe that's just, but these are like really celebrated protest poems about feminism. So first one we're gonna look at is Her Kind by Anne Sexton. So flip to that the next page. And we'll finish this lesson next time. But I'm gonna read it out loud to you and then we're gonna talk about this one. So it says, I have gone out, a possessed witch, haunting the black air, braver at night, dreaming evil. I have done my hitch over the plain houses light by light. Lonely thing, 12-fingered, out of mind. A woman like that is not a woman quite. I have been her kind. I have found the warm caves in the woods, filled them with skillets, carvings, shelves, closets, silks, innumerable goods, fixed the suppers for the worms and the elves, whining, rearranging the disaligned. A woman like that is misunderstood. I have been her kind. I have ridden in your cart, driver, waved my nude arms at villages going by, learning the last bright roots, survivor where your flames still bite my thigh and my ribs crack where your wheels wind. A woman like that is not ashamed to die. I have been her kind. All right, so what I want to do first is I want to take 1 minute per stanza, and just with the people next to you, I want you to figure out what each stanza is about. So we're just kind of looking for plot here, like what is it, like if you put this into your own words, what is it actually about? So stanza number 1, which is just, remember, stanza is like a little paragraph in poetry. Stanza number 1, discuss with the people next to you for 1 minute. What is that stanza about?
Yeah.
Sorry, you've been back here. You're looking at stanza number 1 of Her Kind by Anne Sexton.
Okay, lots of people on their phones discuss what this first stanza is about. Okay, tell me, what is the first stanza about? Oh, Dallin, what'd you say?
I was saying, I was like really confused by it in the beginning, but it's kind of like saying it's like this different like type of person,
Mhm.
but they're still like relating them somehow. Because it says it's like it's not a woman.
Yeah.
I have been her kind, so it's kind of like saying like completely different from, but she still relates.
Yes, okay, so there is somebody that is like distinct and odd, I would say, that is like different from the norm. And this woman is saying, but I have been her kind, so I find something to relate to about her. Okay, Gavin? Yes. Yeah. Yeah, okay, good. So it's like this way of saying there's one, it's not just about a neutral kind of odd person or a person who is not fitting into the status quo. It is specifically a female person that is not fitting into the status quo, right? And because she doesn't fit into the quo, maybe it's because she has 12 fingers. Maybe it is because she seems to be, I don't know, evil in some way. Because of that, she's sort of like shunned. It says that she is lonely, a lonely thing, out of mind, but this woman is saying like, because she is woman, like I can be associated with that too. So it's this way that like witchiness is also femininity. Sophie?
Because I think in the second class, woman like that is not a woman. So I think when saying stuff like 12 fingers or a witch, it's just kind of like mocking, oh, a woman should be better than this or have this or like this. And it's kind of like making it sound like how they think it is, like, oh, a woman, like in those days wearing pants like a woman.
Yeah.
Like standing up for themselves. And she said, I have been her kind of like, we are all like that.
Yeah, good. And I really like that little phrase braver at night for support of that position, which is like when it's under the cover of darkness, you can maybe feel like you can go out and you can be yourself, but in the light of day, you're going to look evil for doing so. Maybe Eli? Yeah.
Because in our society, like, I'm not sure much of a sister, but I get the feeling like a lot of times boys and they're like they kind of like embrace their darker side and like understand themselves and all good and bad. But we do, at least we did back then and maybe a little more now, we kind of like shun that darker side because like everybody has a dark side, but we don't really, it's not really like a cultural like explore that, understand what that dark part is.
Totally. It kind of relates to what you were saying earlier about the Will Smith, Jada Pinkett Smith thing, which is like, she's not really going to be able to act out of anger, so he needs to step in and do it. Right? Yeah. Okay, let's do the second stanza then. I have found the warm caves in the woods, filled them with skillets, carvings, shelves, closets, silks, innumerable goods, fixed the suppers for the worms and the elves, whining, rearranging, and the disaligned. A woman like that is misunderstood. I have been her kind. Okay, so I think that the reminiscences of the witch kind of feel moves into this second stanza, but I don't think she's necessarily talking about a witch anymore. So discuss with each other for 1 minute, what does the second stanza mean? What's the plot of the second stanza?
I'm like, but I'm like, I misunderstood. Or it's like, I take care of the other misunderstood me because I am like that. Like maybe she like it.
It's like kind of like seems kind of negative.
Yeah. So
Let's focus on.
I'm gonna pop. Yeah, I learned a lesson from Will Smith.
Because she's saying, yeah, she's saying that she had skin.
All right, I heard over here, I heard Katie saying something really intelligent. So will you share what you said about that second stanza? Which intelligent thing? That's a good point. Yeah, you were talking about something about like caring for people.
Yeah, so like I think it's either like she has to like take care of people because it's like her role in society. Like I'm a woman, so I'm a caretaker.
Yeah.
And like she doesn't necessarily want to, like she's misunderstood.
Yeah, what I really like about the second stanza too is the way that it builds home in an unusual place. Like here it is in this cave, and yet it seems like the warmest, nicest place to be in the poem, as this like place where she's built a home, and yet that home that she's built and the way that she takes care of, she says, the worms and the elves has been sort of misunderstood. Sophie?
I think it's like it really represents kind of doing it herself instead of in those days. Like they didn't do anything for themselves. Oh, men can do it for you. They don't understand why women want it for themselves. But she doesn't want it.
Yeah, we get this character who's kind of like in the second stanza like a hermit who wants to be like an individual out in the woods and being misaligned for that reason. Okay, wait, I got one more minute. Gavin. Shh. Yeah. Yes, and it seems like this is actually like it is important, necessary work, and yet it's kind of been shoved into this cave. Let's not look at this thing. Let's keep it out there in the woods. Okay, we're gonna come back to talking about this poem next time. So we'll stay on the subject for a second. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for listening to Bikini Kill with me.